Ladies, gentlemen, friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Monday Discourse for today, July 25th, 2022. I'm your host, Tristan. Hello, everyone. Woo! It has been a day. Oh, I've already done so many things, and it's only noon. Hello, everyone. Hopefully everybody's here. How's chat doing? What do we got going on? We've got, yeah, okay, let's see. Pim's here, Orange Man, Canon Con, Madden Math, and Alexis. All right. Sweet. Yes, do apologize for last week. There was a mix-up in scheduling, and I realized that I had the stream when I was like several kilometers from home working in a Starbucks. So my bad on that front. But yeah, this is the Monday Discourse. I stream. My name is Tristan. I'm the host of Step Back, the channel you're probably watching this on right now. And I'm the co-host of the podcast It's Probably Not Aliens. You can find those projects at stepbackhistory.com or probsnotaliens.com. And I stream on Mondays at noon, which is what you're doing. You're watching right this now. I go by he, him pronouns. And you can support my work at patreon.com, so stepbackhistory, for as little as 84 cents a month with a yearly subscription. And you get weekly updates on what's going on. You get to see videos early. You get to vote on new video topics. You get your name in the credits. There's all sorts of really good stuff. And if you are on YouTube, if you wish to do channel memberships are also the same as Patreon. I try to offer the same benefits as patrons at the same who pledge at the same level. So if you want to do channel memberships instead, you're perfectly free to do so. And Twitch Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch subscription every single month. If you choose Step Back, I get a little bit of money at no extra cost to you. It's just baked into your Amazon Prime. So if that's the thing you're into, please do so. And of course, if you do mind spending a few dollars, things like super chats, bits, and Twitch subscriptions are all welcome and appreciated. So, don't miss out on all is appreciated is what I'm trying to say. As for content, my latest video, it's on, sorry, someone decided that I need to wake up at 4:30 this morning. You think it was a baby, but it was my anxiety, because our cat went missing. That was fun. Okay. My latest video is on the attacks on LGBTQ plus people by the far right. And my next video, which I'm hoping to have out later this week, fingers crossed really, either late this week or early next week, something like that, I'm hoping, will be a video on the religious right, evangelicals, the right to abortion, and how the idea that that abortion is just about abortion is not correct, and that there's a bit more going on. So it'll be really good. I hope you'll enjoy it. If you wish to submit questions to the stream, I'm going to give you guys a link in the chat. You can submit questions to ask of me during the stream. If what's it called? If I don't get to them today, I hang on to them for a month. So just check back, and I will almost always get to them. So just remember that. Yeah. Furthermore, if there are any new people, if this is your first time watching one of my streams, hello, nice to meet you. Please make yourself known in the chat. We've got a really great chat community that is very supportive and very kind. So, say hello in the chat. Make yourself known. All right. But that is, I think, everything. That is my whole opening spiel. So Yeah. Whew. Someone said I need coffee, and I agree. I am... Wake me up. All right. What's going on? What's okay, so that's that. Now that we're having a conversation, I've said all of my things. What's going on? It does seem like a lot. There was monkeypox. The president has COVID. What other fun things are there? What's his name? Yeah, Europe is on fire. That's pretty good. Well, no, it's not. It's awful. But it's brutal. We had a pretty big heat wave here too, but nothing close. You guys are having like 40-minute days or something like that? Yeah. Oh. And oh yeah, people are using monkeypox to blame gay people. I forgot about that as well. Oh my goodness. Farmers' protest still going on in the Netherlands, huh? Angry cloggings. Oh yeah, Boris. No, pray for Bojo. I don't exactly like. I haven't followed so super much about what's going on in the UK, but it sounds like maybe they probably had some kind of. There's some sort of like internal politics thing. They basically got too far out of line or something like that. Classic America. If you've got a problem, blame the Gauss. I agree. Gauss rifles, Gauss weapons in general can cause a lot of problems. Those like magnetically, I think a Gauss rifle is like a magnetically propelled bullets, right? Mm-hmm. The Tories basically decided Boris isn't worth it anymore, as far as I know. Yeah, and also like that there's no one really lined up to take over, right? Like what's it called? Like now there's like 30 people or some like crazy high number of people who are all vying for leadership of the Conservative Party. Maybe I should run for leader of the Conservative Party. I mean, everyone's doing it. Do you think that I'd probably make a good Conservative Prime Minister? I have the look for it. I have the physique of a Conservative Prime Minister. I mean, you'd be going from one Prime Minister Johnson to a second Prime Minister Johnson, so that would be fun. My Brexit policies would be to stop doing that. Would be to un-Brexit, to beg Germany for forgiveness. We would send a box full of the best British. What's a really good? I'm gonna use a box full of Jaffa cakes. Yes, I'll send a box of Jaffa cakes to. I don't even remember who the Chancellor of Germany is at the moment, but I'll send it to them and be like, "We're so sorry. We would like to rejoin the European Union now." Woo woo. And hopefully the Jaffa cakes will get us over the line. So. I think I would be the best Conservative Prime Minister of all time with that policy. Who even is the Chancellor of Germany now? Who is it? Who's the Chancellor of Germany? Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Oh, yeah. Olaf Scholz. He looks like a very powerful man who could... Olaf Scholz would probably be... Alright, yeah. I would see... He looks like somebody who would be receptive to a box of Jaffa Cakes in saying apologies for trying to leave the European Union. He is the most German-looking German chancellor I've ever seen. He looks like he has a slide rule and a compass, like, on him at all times, and that he has a degree in engineering. That's my guess. Chancellor of the German Reich. Olaf Scholz. Okay, I'm like looking up this dude. Oh, he's from East Germany, huh? Interesting. Chancellor of the Bundesrepublik Deutschland. Oh yeah. Very fancy German work, yes. We're not allowed to join the German Reich anymore. Oh yeah. I love this. Apparently his signature, I'm looking at his Wikipedia page, and I gotta show you in the chat. Look at his signature. That looks like a signature I would have. I just gotta say. Tristan alienates his German user base. Yeah. Both of them. Schultz wasn't born in East Germany. He's from East and went to Hamburg for college. What? Oh, okay. Oh yeah, he was born in Lower Saxony in West Germany. Well, there we go. I can trust a guy with that kind of a signature, I do have to say. Anyways, I do answer questions occasionally on this stream. I've got a handful now, so should probably answer them. People need to know. The people demand answers. All right. Whew. Okay. Let's do this. Could I please consider critiquing the work of Barbara Tuchman? Barbara Tuchman. Was ist das? Was ist das, Barbara Tuchman? American historian, author, Pulitzer Prize winner for Guns of August, a best-selling history of the prelude to World War I. Okay. Maker of Tuchman's Law. Disaster is rarely as pervasive as it seems in the recorded accounts. The fact of being a record makes it appear continuous and ubiquitous, whereas is more likely to have been sporadic in both time and place. Besides, persistence of the normal is usually greater than the effect of the disturbance, as we know from our own times. After absorbing the news of today, one expects to face a world completely of strikes, crimes, power failures, broken water mains, stalled trains, school shutdowns, muggers, drug addicts, neo-Nazis, and rapists. The fact is that one can come home in the evening on a lucky day without having encountered more than one or two of these phenomenon. This has led to the formula Tuchman's Law as follows. The fact of being reported multiplies the apparent extent of any deplorable development by 5 to 10-fold. This isn't bad, actually. But I don't actually know too much about this person's stuff. But I like that. That's an interesting law. I'll take it. All these Europeans who are like, Olaf Scholz is like this, you know, he's bad. He's only half good. He's a social democrat. And here I am in like Canada, or like the people in the US who are like, they would like, I'd give my left nut to have a person in power who is not like actively trying to destroy democracy and bring about a fascist dictatorship. So we get jealous a little bit. But yeah, as for Barbara Tuchman, I can't say anything about it. I don't think I've read any of her books. Okay. SD parties are not really social democratic post-90s. They're more liberals, but with welfare. You know what? I would take liberals with welfare at this point. I would just like what's it called? Where we are, I'm just like, man, I would take like a like straight up reactionary. Like, our liberals right now are trying to put as much money into building new oil pipelines as possible. Like, I don't know, North American politics is such dog shit that like it makes me jealous of even the shitty politicians that Europeans have. I would not touch North American politics with a 3.3 meter pole. Very clever. I like it. I understood that. Ugh, that's a measurement unit joke. Do you think stochastic organizations is a thing the left should try more of? Any ideas of how to achieve it, if so? That is a good question. I do think that in many ways, like the easy thing for me to say, and people have been saying this as I've been making the White Power series, is that the left should like borrow the organizing and terrorism tactics of the far right, you know, the sort of like leaderless resistance model where you have individual cells made up of just a few people that are you know, that only have like connections through like personal relationships and stuff like that to anybody in any other group, and that just by having access to the same literature and having the same sort of politics, they, through just like publicly available media, will spur each other to political action. That's basically how the White Power movement organizes in the United States. And there's, you know, okay, why can't the left do something like that? And that is interesting. The only problem that comes to mind is, one, the left have a lot of, there's a couple things. One, uneven enforcement of politics. Like the idea that, like, the first thing that comes to mind is that anytime like even if there is a vast and organized right-wing, like militant right-wing movement, the government and the people have a very strong desire to diminish that and try to reduce these organized groups down to being just individuals, or just people who are mentally ill or whatever they want to blame for any given act of terrorism done by this group. While like the left, like you can have any random person do anything, and the media narrative seems to be that, oh, they're all connected. Like, look at the fact that how much work has gone into in the right to try and portray Antifa, like anti-fascist organization, as a singular monolithic entity that has like evil plans for society. And it's like, So first of all, avoiding state crackdown would be pretty difficult for any left-wing group, hence why there probably isn't as much of an organized left right now in the U.S., but in the West in general. Second is that the left disagrees a lot more on various things than the right do. And so the idea that they would just read the same material and be informed in the same ways and do the same thing is like laughable to a... Like, can you imagine a left-wing militant group organized in such a fashion? It would just go crazy. Everybody would have their own interesting ideas and priorities that would just go in all sorts of different directions. So there's that. Yeah. So where the left succeeds normally is in mass mobilization, specifically in mobilizing sectors of the economy. Like, I don't know exactly how you would do this, but historically, socialists have been the most successful when they did stuff like organizing workplaces and getting unions under board and all those kinds of things. The problem is that unions have evolved into their current form, which is very much like, existing under the liberal capitalist framework, that unions now are just as likely to support right-wing movements as they are left-wing movements, even if they are anti-labor type politicians. And so they can't be relied upon as like, an easy way to bolster the ranks of left-wing politics. Because basically starting in the 60s, you had a lot of left-wing activism move from this sort of working class focused left-wing solidarity to something that is primarily focused on social issues and primarily driven by the highly educated professional class. And that has very thoroughly alienated a lot of like working class people. And while, like, there's been people on the internet who've been like, and the solution to that is that now the left needs to embrace racism, which is like, or transphobia or whatever. Well, that's not the answer. That's definitely where our effort should be put into trying to make left-wing ideas that are accessible and understandable and, digestible to our overworked, underpaid masses who just have been propagandized from birth to not see that this whole structure built up around us is profoundly unfair and cruel. All right. Alrighty. Just gotta move my headphones around. I am I'm gonna try to keep going, but man, my brain is not functioning. It's rough. Okay. Let's do this. All right. Let's see. If there was a general election in the UK in the near future, which it seems like might happen, the most likely outcomes would either be a conservative minority government or a Labour Liberal Democrat coalition. Thing is, the Lib Dems have made forming such a coalition contingent on electoral reform. If that happens, it'll become a lot harder for the Tories to get back in. Like, they could be out of power for a generation or more. As a leftist, should I want that? Like, given what the Labour Party are like at the moment, should I want us to institute a proportional representation that'll make things easier for them to get and stay in power without changing their politics at all? I mean, yeah, the fact is that, like, this happens with, like a lot of, like, our politics here in Canada are the same, where we have a profoundly undemocratic form of government representation because of first past the post electoral districting. And that's why we have, like, we've had 2 elections now where the prime ministers, like, the party that got a majority government, or the party that won anyway, did so with like 30-something% of the popular vote. Like, I think that the most recent election was like the smallest popular vote forming of government in Canadian history, or something wild like that. And unfortunately, because of the, like, kind of liberal conservative dynamic, it's going to be unlikely to change in the future. But it would be good if it did, because I think that you get, I know that, like, proportional representation results in, like, a whole lot of very low or a lot of, like, small political parties, but I feel like that's actually a lot more healthy than, like, you know, these big broad coalition parties that have to wrangle the interests of so many different people. ADHD winning today? No. Brain is just not working today for the most part. I had a little bit of a anxiety episode this morning at like 4 a.m. And then I had an early morning doctor's appointment. So I had to, like, get up at like 4:30, and then, like, I had just enough time to get myself together until the baby woke up, and I had to entertain him until I had to go to the doctor. And I had to walk to the doctor, and the doctor's like several kilometers away, so it was like almost an hour-long walk, and now I'm home. But I am very tired. All right, what we got next? What can be done to fix Canada's giant internet problems? May just be observation about bias, but all the Canadian streamers I follow have a lot more internet problems. That's not observation bias. Canada is basically the worst country in the world to have internet in. It's well known that Canada has the highest communications, like telecommunications bills on Earth. Like, we have the most expensive internet on Earth. We have the most expensive cell phones on Earth. Our cell phone plans are very shitty and very unreliable. And our internet companies are also very shitty, don't provide much, and they're very unreliable. That's because both of them are controlled by a small cartel, essentially, of megacorps. Because Canada is just a corporate... Canada is just a for-profit corporation. So, like, our entire telecommunications service is run by 3 companies, basically. And that results in like them being able to throttle internet connections and all sorts of bullshit like that, to the point where for example, one of those megacorps had an update go sideways, and their network went down for 1 day. But because there's only 2 to 3 internet providers in the whole country, it basically destroyed the internet for the entire country almost. And so I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had a day where there was basically no internet for an entire day. And that included all the things that rely on the internet, which means that you could only buy stuff in cash. But also people's cell phones didn't work properly. If they had Rogers as their cell phone provider, or Fido, because there's a lot of companies that are different cell phone providers, but are actually just one of these 3 companies, or they're my internet service provider is not Rogers, but it's a smaller company that uses the Rogers network. And so when Rogers' network went down, they went down too. So that's a thing. And it results in a lot of it resulted in some really big problems. Not so much the internet being down, the internet being down was bad, but it resulted in stuff people who did home checks, what's it called, PSWs, doing home checks, not being able to access the database to find out what medications all of their patients need. It resulted in cell phones being down so that they could not... the cell phones were down so thoroughly that they were having serious problems because people weren't able to call for ambulances or able to call 911, really. Which was a huge, you can imagine would be very, very dangerous. And so it was absolutely, and also because of people going on to other internet, other service providers, to sort of compensate, those got overloaded and they were also pretty unusable. So yeah, the whole country basically lost its internet for a day. It was wild. It was like that South Park episode where the internet stopped working, basically, yeah. Do you think a leftist party could win if they had leverage in North America, if they started on the state level in places like Vermont, Utah, BC, etc.? I do think that there is something to be said about North American socialist politics being started in smaller movements in local government. Because I think there actually are more socialists in local governments already. They just, if they could be organized in a way, if a socialist political party decided that it wanted to take off, instead of trying to invest in running in a presidential run, which is, a huge project that is very expensive and, a lot of resources and infrastructure needs to be developed in order to do that properly. It'd be a lot better if, say, they focused on just getting some local races and then building on those successes. I do think that would be a way to that'd be a way to solve that. I do remember when the internet went out for that 1 day. Some people were asking about it. We actually, since I remember how I have a little bit of what's it called? I have a lot of things around. I have a lot of survival stuff because I'm a bit of a prepper, and so we actually had our solar power, crank power, battery powered radio, and we were listening to CBC to figure out if we can get updates on things. It was pretty good. Was Bernie wrong not to build a party around him? I do think that if I were to say that if I were to figure out what Bernie's next move would be, I think Bernie did exactly what he needed to do. I mean, it'd be great if he was president, but the idea of Bernie becoming bringing normalizing the socialist conversation and really building a movement out of nowhere, that's great. at this point, getting used to the idea of building like promoting socialist politicians and like building a socialist coalition, even if it's even part of the Democratic Party, like if it's like just like a a faction that tries to leverage power to get some concessions, that would be a good idea. That's that's a hard project. Building a model kit of the USS Voyager. So I have a question: Star Trek Voyager, bad or underrated? I definitely think that it gets more shit than it deserves. I watched it. We watched through it in 2020 and 2021, and it was a decent show. I had never ever like just sat down and watched the whole thing through before, and I feel like it was legitimately a good show. It's obviously like the thing is about old Star Trek, especially 90s Star Trek, is that those shows had to fill 7 seasons with like 22 to 25 episodes a season. Like that level of output is insane. And you can imagine that means that not every episode's going to be a banger. You know, that there's going to be some boring episodes. And Voyager, with that grueling schedule, still managed to have some very good episodes. It had some very notable bad episodes, and there are definitely some decisions that I think I would have made differently, for sure. And it definitely pales in comparison to the other Star Trek shows in the 90s. Like, it's definitely the least good of the 90s Star Trek shows. But that doesn't make it a bad show. And I think that it is well justified that, as people were talking about, Voyager sort of got written off by Trekkies early on. But when it entered onto Netflix, people started... it got really popular and people started streaming it again, to the point where Voyager became like this really, really popular random show. And that's great. And I love that. I do think I do think that it's like not a, I think that it's an okay show. So I'm down. I like it. Do I have thoughts on Colombia electing an ex-Marxist Leninist guerrilla leader? I'm surprised he's alive. Colombia is very much the country that the United States uses as its sort of like base of operations in South America. That's why it's been like almost exclusively controlled by like right-wing militias for a good chunk of its recent history. The fact that that could change is going to be or the fact that that's not the case right now is pretty intense. My guess is that there's going to be a lot more anger against this new president in short order, because it would definitely be in American interests to pull a freaking what's it called? The president, it's not Chavez. Friggin' the president of Bolivia recently, who got Evo Morales. Friggin' do an Evo Morales type coup on him, I would imagine. Do I think Lula's going to win again in Brazil's next election this October? I hope so. I know that Bolsonaro's gotten some shit for really botching the COVID response, but we'll see if Brazilians remember that well enough for as far as October. Do I think everywhere in Latin America will go pink tide? I don't know. I'm not an expert on Latin American politics. I'm sure somebody who actually is more well-versed in that would have a much better take on what's going on politically there. It's a bit what's it called? There is definitely a lot of cause for hope in South America right now, though. I'm sure we're going to hear shortly in the news about how oppressed the Colombian people are. Yeah, for sure. That's my suspicion as well. Am I the only one tired of so much left content being just reacting to the same half dozen people? Like, I get not ignoring them entirely, but do we need new videos reiterating that Joe Rogan's a dipshit, Ben Shapiro's a racist transphobe, and Candace Owens is a alt-light token black friend? I just can't anymore. I never learn anything new. I just get mad, and anyone who doesn't already agree has been programmed to ignore critical voices. It just feels like a content Ouroboros at this point. Yeah. I agree with this. This is why I tend not to make that kind of content. I know that it does very well, but yeah, it is tedious, and I think that it doesn't really advance anything really, and so it's not a thing that I tend to put a lot of effort into. The only thing that sucks about that is that I made like one video about PragerU, and it's like one of my most popular videos of all time, and like, so it works. A lot of people will watch that shit. But you know, it's obviously something that I have tried not to talk about, but I probably will need to because I need views, but it's bad. It's definitely not conducive to really helping develop new ideas and all that kind of stuff. Am I answering chat questions or pre-submitted? I'm kind of bouncing between the two. I don't know if I have enough questions to get all the way to the end of the stream, and so I'm just sort of like, you know, listening and going through and such. The oil companies in Canada have so many future liabilities that they are planning to bankrupt these to cost the public. We could nationalize them without any more compensation. That sounds good to me. You're not an expert on American politics either? Oh yeah? Do I need to go? Oh wait, my. I got things. I got pieces of paper in fucking framed things to say otherwise. Bartholomew. I have a master's degree in American Cultural Studies and a second master's degree in American History. So, if I could consider myself an expert on anything in this awful world, it's American politics. Or just America in general. What's my opinion on those soldiers in an active war zone with Nazi tattoos and salutes? Don't know that one. You talking about like the freaking like people in Ukraine? Don't know too much about that one actually. Well, I'm working on a video on it, but I don't have like I don't like a lot of things about what's going on in Ukraine, obviously, because the war is awful. But because Russia did an unprovoked war of aggression and is doing terrible things, it has resulted in some people that I have had a lot of respect for running cover and making excuses for some very troubling stuff being done by the Ukrainians. So, yeah. New subscriber here, so you must be doing something correctly. Nice to meet you. Step back. Well, thank you, Double Rainbows. That's such a clever name. Thoughts on Fetterman in Pennsylvania? Which one is John Fetterman? I don't know about this guy. Is this a new tenure? I recognize the face. Seems like he shit talked against Trump. That's fun. I don't know much about this guy, honestly. Just from like the little bits I'm picking up here, it sounds like he's got some pretty good takes, but that's good though, because there's actually a blue-collar progressive populist Democrat who's converting rural voters in Pennsylvania. That is good. That is good news, especially because like the guy he's 52, and there's actually not. I've kind of talked about this in previous streams that there's like this. There's what's it called? There's this block of a gap almost, because there's I mentioned, like, if you go to any sort of like socialist space, you end up with two sets of people, very, very old or very, very young, because everybody from like the boomer and Gen X generations are so thoroughly propagandized against anything that resembles left-wing politics that the most left-wing that you can really ever convince them to are to become like light progressive centrists. That's about the most that you can get. Like, you can get, and to see this guy who's like, you know, a Gen Xer, getting a platform in left-wing politics in the U.S. is very good to hear, because, and also focusing on a sort of working class solidarity, because I told you that that's like, you know, I think that is, if there is a pathway to success for the left in America, it is to make all these people who are super screwed over by capitalism be aware that it's capitalism's fault, not the gays or the transes or whatever scapegoat that freaking reactionaries have been feeding them for decades. So, sounds good. Does Romeo miss Phoebe at all, or is he like, yeah, I finally got my own space? He definitely, like, okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, not last week, but the week before, we had to put Phoebe down, because we don't know exactly what was wrong with her, but we think that she had cancer. And like last Thursday, the Thursday night of that week, right after we recorded It's Probably Not Aliens, actually, she started showing signs that her nervous system wasn't doing super well. She was getting very wobbly and very weak, and like lying down for like long periods of time and not really moving. So we were like, oh yeah, she was really not in a good way. And so we took her to the vet the next day, and they ended up having to put her down. And it was very rough. So now we only have Romeo. So the thing about cats is that if they're not related to each other, and they're not introduced to each other at a young age, they basically don't like each other. The thing is, like, people think that cats might be like dogs or like rats or something like that, and that they, like, you know, they want to have a friend or else they'll be bored. But cats are very much solitary animals that are very territorial, and they don't really like other cats being in their territory. That's just sort of how they are. There's very few cats actually really like being around other cats for the most part. And so our cats always sort of kept space from each other. And that, you know, that was that. But yeah, after Phoebe has passed away, Romeo's been like, yeah, moving into places where she used to be, and now he's a lot more, he's living his best life, let's be honest. Although he did run away yesterday. He ran. Okay, this is super embarrassing. But we forgot to lock the door when we went out on Sunday. and it got really windy, and the wind blew the door open. So when we got home from the farmer's market, our front door was wide open, and Romeo bolts. He makes a run for the outside at the first opportunity. So we thought like, oh fuck, he's gone. But it turns out that he was just beside the house. But then he ran away from us, because when you go after a cat when they're outside, they run away. And he ran underneath the porch, and I guess got stuck in there because he couldn't figure out how to get out. So he was just stuck under the porch all night. We couldn't find him. But then this morning, we heard him and we got him out. So he's fine now. But yeah. What's my thoughts on the South running the Civil War out of Canada? I don't know too much about that, honestly. I do know that there was a little bit of that because the British were kind of Confederate friendly, but I remember Canadians not being a fan of that because Canada got rid of slavery like way before the British Empire did, and we really didn't like slavery. We're really like grumpy about it, and so. There was actually like a bit. I think if I remember, this might be something like I heard like a long time ago, but this might be something which was that there was sort of a wedge created between Canada and the UK because of us basically taking different sides of the Civil War, even though neither of us participated in it, obviously. But that resulted in the beginning of what would lead to. Just like, 3 years after the Civil War ended, the Confederation of Canada, turning Canada into its independent country. Now, there are other things involved as well in that, like curbing American expansion and the UK wanting to focus on its colonies in India and Egypt and stuff like that, but still. Is the stream flaky? No. Oh well, it looks like the dropped frames seem to have bit past, which is nice. The Underground Railroad did also mostly lead to Canada. Yeah. So like the way that the story goes, the way that we tell it in Canadian history classes, which, probably is bullshit, but this does show a little bit about how it functioned, which is that, there was an incident in early Ontario, where in early Ontario history, there was this very public incident of the abuse of a slave in the street that caused a major outcry from the people in Ontario, which led to the Governor General at the time, whose name was John Simcoe, who to basically outlaw slavery in Ontario. John Simcoe is a really big deal here in Ontario. His name is on everything. But Americans might know him because he's usually considered one of the villains of the American Revolution, because he was one of the generals for the British. But he banned slavery in Ontario, and essentially once the United States got together and it became a country that practiced slavery, Canada became the end of the Underground Railroad. And because the British were, happy to create trouble for the Americans, the Underground Rail, like when slaves were, taken to Canada, they were, the Canadian government, or whatever, the Ontario, or I guess it wasn't called Ontario at that point, it was called the Colony of Upper Canada, as it were. Upper Canada was Upper Canada was very happy to be in a diplomatic standoff with the U.S. and not return said slaves. And there was also like a little bit of a black community in Canada that tried to, that tried to get involved in certain ways as well, in said things, because one of the things that happened in the American South, because during the American Revolution, if Mr. Beat's still here, he could probably speak to this more than me. My expertise in American history is actually focused on post-1871 America, but during the American Revolution, the southern states were actually kind of apprehensive about joining the revolution, but to get troops to fight, the British started going up and down the Mississippi and basically trading freedom for slaves in exchange for their service in His Majesty's army, and the idea of freeing slaves, like, basically pissed off the South enough that they joined the war. And then after the war was over, a lot of those formerly enslaved black soldiers ended up, like all of the refugees of the loyalists, ended up moving to Ontario. And basically, this is sort of why in Canadian history, the American Revolution is actually kind of taught like it is the in Canadian history, the American Revolution is sort of taught as the genesis of our history as well, because a lot of the Canadian colonies were fairly sparsely populated until after the American Revolution, when we had to settle all of those refugees from the war. And we basically, founded a lot of good chunks of Ontario, which, is like, the one, it's like, probably the second oldest province in the country, or one of the oldest ones anyways. I guess like Nova Scotia and stuff like that are also pretty old. Because, yeah, before that, it was the British territory that was just their spoils of war from the 7 Years' War, which the 7 Years' War was a war between England and France, where France lost and had to give up all of its North American colonies, and so what would become most of Canada ended up going to the British. Knights of the Golden Circle. The Knights of the Golden Circle was a Southern secret society that basically wanted to expand the U.S. into... they wanted to conquer a bunch of Caribbean islands to expand slavery there and create what they called a Golden Circle, which was basically like the Gulf Sea, basically. Am I Canadian? Yes. Yes, I am a Canadian. I live in London, Ontario. I'm born here, lived here my whole life. The only time I've ever left Canada is I lived for 3 years in Quebec when I was doing my undergrad. Alrighty. So, that was a little bit of that. Anybody else got some cool... now I'm curious, how much the standard K-12 Canadian education curriculum is just how Canada defines itself in relation to what is happening in the U.S.? A lot. There's this whole... I don't know about the K-12 education, but a lot of Canada is... a lot of, like, Canadian cultural studies is about our lack of having any sort of real unique identity of our own and defining ourselves by comparing ourselves to the United States. And that happens a lot. That is a big part of us. But also there is a lot because like despite the fact that, the US grew up to be a much more powerful country, Canada and the US do have, like, they are in some ways siblings. Like we were the... Canada was sort of made of the people and territory of British North America that didn't leave in the American Revolution, and that says something. But it does mean that there is a genealogy that connects them. But yeah, now like Canada's identity is so defined by its relationship with the United States. It's extreme. It's a huge deal here. Which also means that we sometimes have things really shitty here because, like, for example, in Canada, we don't have pharmacare, which means that we still have to pay for medications, which, Europeans don't have to pay for medications, but we do. And people have pointed out, like, hey, this is really shitty. We probably shouldn't have to pay for medications, or maybe not even have to pay to go to the dentist. But the thing is, a lot of people will respond with like, well, things aren't as bad here as they are in the US, so we shouldn't complain or change anything. It's like, okay. Dumb American moment. Quebec isn't in Canada. So that's like, okay. That's not a dumb question. That's actually a good question, especially for people who don't live in the United States or live in Canada. So Quebec is in Canada, but it's not Canadian. The closest, okay. Good example. Here's a couple good examples that might make things make more sense. In America, Puerto Rico, right? Well, maybe not Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico is more of a colony. The best example I think would say Scotland, right? Like, if you, Scotland is part of the United Kingdom for now, but I think that anybody who was to visit the United Kingdom would definitely distinguish between going to the United Kingdom and going to Scotland, because there is sort of English culture and there's Scottish culture. But the thing is, they also have, Northern Ireland and Wales and such. But I know that. But I'm hoping that, like, the idea that it is that Scotland is like within the sort of greater frame of the United Kingdom as state, but is a distinct country and nation within that. Quebec is very similar. Quebec is a province of Canada, yes, but it doesn't have that sort of Anglo-Canadian identity in it. The province enjoys a level of autonomy that the other provinces do not. They have a very, very distinct politics, distinct culture, they have a distinct language. They're the only province where French is their only official language. And they have gone to extreme efforts to preserve French as the official language of business and everything like that there. So it's like that. They're a nation within the country that is different. It has, of course, over time. Quebec has various levels of independence movements or nationalist movements. Most of that probably peaked with the baby boomer movement. There was a couple referendums to have Quebec leave Canada and become an independent country. The first one was in 1980, which lost like kind of 60-40. Then there was the one in 1995, which was a very, very close victory for the Stay campaign. And now that we're like a generation later, like younger Quebecois people who are nationalists aren't usually separatists or what they call sovereigntists. They are more into like now the sort of nationalist vote used to be focused on a political party called Parti Québécois, but it's sort of split now between the Parti Québécois, which is sort of like the center left nationalist party, and the Coalition Avenir Québec, which is the Coalition for Quebec. which is a right-wing nationalist party. And then there is the oh gosh, what's the other party called? Oh yeah, Quebec Solidaire, which is sort of like a Quebec social democratic, like left-wing political party, but it's very small. And so, yeah, and there's also the Quebec Liberal Party, which is the sort of the Federalist Party, I guess you would say. It's the pro-Canada party. So, you know, like, I think if you were to JJ compared Quebec to Kurdistan and Iraq in a recent video, yeah, I mean, JJ McCullough is a bigot who hates French people, so I wouldn't trust a whole lot of what he has to say about Quebecois or about Quebec. Just put it out there. Why does it make me think it sounds like Texas? Texas would like to think it's like this. I think Texas is a little... Texas likes to think that it's more independent than it really is. But Quebec has much more of a national identity than, say, Texas does. Texans would, like... A lot of Texans would still say America is the greatest country in the world, and if you don't like it, you could get out. While, like, Quebec, they don't consider, like, Quebec and Canada and Canadian are considered two different and exclusive identities. And so, like, for example, they have their, like, we have Canada Day, which is sort of like the day that Canada got its, what's it called? It got its, where we got the British North America Act was signed and everything like that on July 1st. But on June 24th is a holiday called Fête Saint-Jean-Baptiste, which is sort of the Quebec, the sort of feast of Quebec, or it's the feast of Saint John the Baptist, but Saint Jean Baptiste is like sort of like the Quebecois national holiday, and they refer to it as the like La Fête Nationale, versus, like, you know, Fête Canada, the sort of Canadian holiday. So there's definitely, like, if Texans had like a sort of Texas Day and referred to them as Texans and not as Americans, I feel like that would be a little bit more of a thing, but that's not as much of a thing for sure. Low-key trying to figure out if the JJ bigot stance is sarcasm or not. JJ McCullough, from my history of looking at his stuff, is a very conservative Canadian who very much takes a sort of like Anglo-centric and specifically anti-Francophone stance on a lot of things. He has a very, and this is kind of rampant in a lot of Canadian conservative politics, there is this strong anti-French like resentment politics that comes out of like the conservative circles, and he's got a lot of that, and he talks a lot about how he really doesn't have much respect for Quebec's identity or its idea of like it's having its own culture and its own being its own thing. How has Quebec been able to get away with still being French only when the rest of Canada seems to be stuck in this officially bilingual but functionally no one speaks French state? First of all, that's always that's a little bit more complicated than that, the way that sounds. There are bilingual provinces. For example, New Brunswick is officially a bilingual province. But like there are French communities in every province. Quebec is the only place where like 80% of the people who live there are French speakers primarily. But there is French people who live in every province in the country. And there are like for example, in New Brunswick, there's a significant French minority called Acadians, and they're very much like they very much have their own thing going on. For example, we also have in Manitoba, they have a big what's called Métis, which is sort of like the French version of saying mestizo, which is the sort of indigenous French hybrid culture that exists there. So there's a lot of, and there are pockets across the country, but you're not wrong in that, like, still primarily in all those other provinces, there are French, they're primarily English speaking places. So that is a thing, but like, yeah, there's a lot, like, it's a lot more complicated than that. And then also, the only other reason is because, that Quebec has gone to extreme effort. They had a big, like, political revolution in the 50s called the Quiet Revolution that led to a French takeover of politics. And they go to, like, big lengths to ensure that French stays the language of business. Like, the example, they have the OQLF, which is the Office Québécois de la Langue Française, which is a government organization that polices, like, literally is like the French police, where they make sure that, like, you know, every business operates in French, that French is the language spoken in every office, and, like, all that kind of stuff. They have laws in place that make it very hard to go to English school in Quebec. Like, there is an English school system, but you have to be an English child of English parents to go. If you have French parents, you have to go to French school. If you have parents who don't speak English or French, you have to go to French school. So they have gone to the next level. Someone said, Akkadians, are they fans of Sargon of Akkad? You're thinking Akkadians, which is, yeah, the sort of Babylonian dynasty. No, Akkadians, Acadian, I want to say. Yeah. They're actually, the closest, probably well-known ethnic group that they're related to are Cajuns. Because most Acadians after the 7 Years' War were actually deported from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and they were deported down to Louisiana, where they became Cajuns. But, you know, the language politics is very complicated in Canada, especially in Quebec. So there's weird stuff that happens, but it doesn't really make a whole lot out of the country, I don't think. And, like, there's some other stuff too. Like, there is, oh yeah, another thing that's really big is that there is something called the Francophonie, which is sort of like the French version of the Commonwealth, which is sort of like a coalition of French-speaking countries. And Quebec and Canada are both members of the Francophonie. And they're distinct, they're different members. The only thing that the English versus French school thing is incredibly messed up. I mean, to an extent, I mean, we got some more fucked up stuff, like how Ontario still has a publicly funded Catholic school system, which was made for segregating our French and Irish students into. But there's, like, you know, there's definitely, like, stuff that, but, like, the idea of having, like, I think that there's an inclusion in the fact that they have an English and a French school system. They're both publicly run. They're both, they're not, it's not like segregation or anything like that. It's just they're just exclusive systems. I think in Quebec they came out of the fact that they had a Protestant and a Catholic school system that became the English and French school system, because Quebec is extremely they take secularism very seriously. But yeah, it's, will some parts of Canada ever rejoin France? Not likely. more like if Quebec were to ever vote for separation, it's more likely they'd become an independent country than anything. What's interesting though is that there is when the 7 Years' War happened and the British took a bunch of Canadian territory from the French. One of the things they did hang on to was a pair of islands called Saint Pierre and Miquelon, which is sort of in the Gulf, or sorry, in the St. Lawrence area, where there was a lot of cod fishery happening. There isn't much cod there anymore, but it was really big and profitable cod fishing area. But to this day, it is still part of France. So there is this place that's very, very close off the shore of the Canadian coast where they use the euro and like they fly the French flag and all that kind of stuff. It's like that weird thing when you find out that there is technically a land border between France and Brazil. Spanish, yeah. So yeah. I know Americans don't have to learn Spanish in school, but they should. I think that if America ever wants to have an official language and make it only English, if they want to not make Spanish a language that they have to teach, then they have to give back all of the land taken in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, because like a good chunk of America now was just straight up conquered from the Mexicans. And you should give that back if you're not going to say that the people who live there are not entitled to speak the language that, so yeah, the next question I got here is, what's my favorite D&D class? Now I'm a little, I've bubbled up a little bit. Great question to start with. My favorite D&D class. So I don't get to play D&D much. I run it a bunch, but I have for the last 7 months actually been a player in a campaigns where I've been playing a ranger. And I know that rangers are kind of, people are kind of sus of them, but I will say my two favorite, and I also played a artificer and a druid for a good chunk of another campaign in years past, and I liked them a lot. Druid was a bit too much for me, honestly. I think my favorite classes that I played were fighters. Was a fighter where I only got to play a 20th level fighter for one combat, but it was so fun. Especially when you pulled the action surge and you do 8 attacks in one round. That was really fun. But the other one would probably be the monk. I played a monk for a while, and I really liked the monk. What is D&D, please? Dungeons & Dragons, a tabletop role-playing game. But I really like playing a monk. They're fun. They're infinitely useful. But I will say, very big fan of what's it called? Very big fan of the ranger I'm playing right now. So, but I know that rangers, that's only because we're only level 7, and rangers sort of don't stay good forever. D&D is probably the most fun you can have with other people. Yeah, it's probably like the best way. It's like the most fun thing that you can do with other people that involves keeping your clothes on or getting drunk. Have I started considered playing Star Trek Adventures? To an extent, I have. I don't have it, but I have. I've been wanting to look at it. I think that that Star Trek Adventures is a little bit too crunchy for me. I think D&D is too crunchy for me, but I have a feeling that to get the feeling of a Star Trek RPG, that there are other systems that would keep the there are other systems of role-playing game that I feel would contain the feeling of Star Trek better than what I see out of the Star Trek Adventures game. For example, I think that Fate Core is actually a better RPG system for Star Trek, because Star Trek's all about like people coming together and building on each other and like supporting, but also about like cleverly thinking through different like problems using science, using using all that kind of stuff and philosophy. And Fate is very much about setting things up in order to try stuff out and like having like I think it would work a lot better, but that's just me. All right. Plus, a lot of like because like Star Trek Adventures has a lot of like D&D style stats. When in my mind, like I think that most of the aliens in Star Trek are fairly similar to each other in their like ability, and individual ability is a much bigger deal. And that more of what could be defined as like unique alien stuff would be like stunts in Fate. But I don't know. I haven't read Star Trek Adventures, so maybe I'm getting it completely wrong. I've only ever like glanced at some stuff. All right. I've heard from Comrade Silverspook that our Communist Party is collapsing. Do you have any knowledge on the status of the CPC? Okay, yeah, so this is about Canada having like a big... yeah, the Canadian Communist Party is basically tearing itself apart over accusations of sexual misconduct by the leader of the party. And the sort of insiders of the party, rather than addressing it, are basically circling the wagons and defending the person who's in charge, which has led to like massive like drama and like big people like walking off and breaking off from the party and all sorts of stuff. The CPC, I'm talking about the Communist Party of Canada, sorry. And so they had like a big meeting recently, and it led to like massive like people like freaking out. They released a policy document that was calling for the lowering of the age of consent, and like people were like, what the fuck is this? So yeah, there's been a lot of drama going on in the Communist Party, and there's a lot of thoughts that it might not stick together that long. As far as I don't know what like you're talking about, if you're talking, I mean that was the question. The question was the Communist Party. In Sri Lanka, the communists are gaining headway. Excellent, beautiful. There are two parties with the same name. Yes, I know. I was referring to the communists. The question was, our Communist Party is collapsing. Do you have any knowledge on the status of the CPC? So I was implying through context that it was referencing the Communist Party. How are we doing, chat? Isn't there another Canadian Communist Party? I think there is. I think there's like I think Ontario has multiple communist parties, but oh no, wait, there is a Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada, isn't there? Yes. Oh no, the CPC is the Marxist-Leninist Party. Oh, okay. The Communist Party of Canada is registered by Elections Canada as the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada. I think, though, that there's... That's the other thing, too, is that the CPC is very... they're very tanky-ish. They're very like, you know, their official ideology was like Maoism and then a Hoshism. They're a very tanky party. Is your Communist Party full of turfs like ours? I do not know, actually. But I know that, yeah, the Canadian Communist Party is very, like, Stalinist, basically. Yeah, their whole thing is like anti-revisionism. So, yeah, their whole thing is that, you know, everything went wrong after Stalin, I guess. Nikita Khrushchev was the beginning of the end, and so need to go back to Stalin world, I guess. Ugh. How do we take the sport of golf back from the rich? Well, Orange Man, I do not know. Unfortunately, golf is one of those sports that costs a lot of money, not only to build the places where the game is played, but also to buy the equipment to use it. And part of its draw, like as a game, is its connection to wealth and power. Like, I don't know if it has the legs to keep going. You know what? Here you go. There is a way to take the sport of golf back from the rich, and that is to convert it to mini putt. Mini putt, the game of the people. That's my take. Are you remotely surprised that the UK Communist Party has a turf problem? It seems like the UK everything is a turf problem is the problem. But yeah, all right, so the people's golf is what we're going to call mini putt now. The more audacious and funny the tracks and holes can be, the better. Man, I can't wait until my my son is like almost 7 months old, and I'm kind of excited until he gets old enough that I can take him to I can take him mini putting. That'd be so much fun. Plus, yeah, it's, what's it called? Like, a lot of golf courses are humongous and take up way too much space and are environmentally disasters. So we get rid of the golf courses, put public housing on them, and just replace them all with mini putt, the superior sport, the golf of the people. See, like, everyone in the chat is genuinely, like, everyone, the thing is, we need to be playing more mini putt, guys. It's such a fun way to spend a couple hours, and there's literally, nobody has any problems with it. Everybody in the chat's just like, this is the best thing ever. And it's like, yeah, and it's super fun to do with kids. It's super fun to do when the weather's nice. It's like, you can do it outside. You can do it in the dark with black lights. There's like, literally, like, yeah, just, it should be, it is genuine, and you don't have to be like, it's a game that is kind of a sport, but you don't have to be athletic to do it. It's great. It is definitely the sport of the people. And yeah, Pim, you got it set up. Your country is basically made of windmills, so you can have so many mini putt courses there. I remember last summer we played mini putt and it was very fun. And now we can't because we have a baby, but I would like to do that again when the baby can play the golf. My dad is super pissed because they're building a train track through his golf club. It's hilarious. That does sound pretty fun. Speaking of 80s disco porn sets, the other sport of the people that is unambiguously a great way to spend time is laser tag. The other sport of the people. We need to destigmatize laser tag and embrace it as we should have, what's it called? Laser tag should be in the Olympics. That's what I'm saying. Because not only, like, you can go there, but if you drop enough money, like, and you say that you're 8, you get a free pizza. It's great. If you say it's an 8-year-old and it's your birthday, you can go there and you can get pizza at the end. It's perfect. What stigma? I don't know. It has, like, I guess it has a stigma of being for kids, is the thing. That's what we did for my niece's bridal party. It was a blast. That does sound pretty good. Ages 11 to 60-ish. Perfect. Excellent. No notes. No notes. Laser tag for every wedding. Perfect. Precisely. All right. So that's how we take golf back from the rich. Embrace, disregard, disregard golf. Embrace mini putt. All right. The UK Labour Conference was held in my town one year in a former laser tag place. All the pundits were covering under a giant sign that said Laser Zone. You know what? I like it. The Labour Party should have, if anything, that is a better name for the Labour Party than the Labour Party. Is call it the Laser Zone. Can you imagine? Yes, the leader of the Laser Zone will, just won North-South Suffolk. Laser Zone. I feel like, all right, if we ever need to like redevelop a left-wing politics so that it's develops for the modern age, I have a feeling that like all these different ideologies all have these very academic sounding names, like, you know, anarcho syndicalism, or Marxist Leninism, or, you know, Maoism, or whatever. Why not call the ideology the Laser Zone? Like, let's have an ideology just called Laser Zone. Like, I am a Laser Zone believer. Time to rename anarchism to state be gone. Yeah. Perfect. Because when someone joins the party, you can just say that they entered the Laser Zone. Try voting against the Laser Zone. Go again. Try. You can't do it. Alright, let's see what the next question is. On a recent episode of It Can Happen Here, they talked about the assassination of Shinzo Abe, and one of the hosts suggested the backlash to this could result in his right-wing party sweeping the next election and then trying to turn Japan into a fascist empire again. Maybe Japan will become a one-party dictatorship again, but they wanted to start doing imperialism again. I don't get who they could direct it at, given where they are. They're in the middle of China and the US's Asian sphere of influence. All their old imperial targets are now under the protection of one of those two nuclear superpowers. Yeah, if anything, Japan militarizing would be more to antagonize and saber rattle against China, I think. I'm not like an expert on like Japanese right-wing politics, but that it does seem like a lot of it is motivated by like anxiety over the ambitions of China. You know, the assassination of Shinzo Abe, though, was fucking wild. Just icing that person with a handmade gun because your mom joined a cult or something? It's pretty wild. Are they able to militarize yet? Yes, they did start militarizing slightly. And someone did mention, yeah, there's also the Kuril Islands, which is that there is an island chain north of Japan that is disputed ownership between Japan and Russia. So that could be a thing that they're getting grumpy about. But I feel like a lot more of like right-wing nationalist militarization stuff in Japan is focused around fear of China specifically. The thing about the Shinzo Abe thing is that it really felt low on the radar for me because the day that news hit us was the day that Canada's internet went down. So that kind of dominated the conversation up here. But you are right in pointing out that I don't think even the most like right-wing nationalist Japanese people would have very many territorial growth ambitions anymore. All right, what's with the experts in Matt Walsh's doc? Obviously, most of them are grifters and transpos. Without one academic Matt interviews to mock gender studies, really should have known better. Like, how do you not look up who asked to interview him? I don't even know what this is about. Sorry. When did it become politically taboo for politicians in Western countries to be explicitly anti-democracy? So you know the GOP justified their attempts to steal elections by saying that they're just trying to deliver the correct result after the left-wing Venezuelan communists stole it first. Why can't they just say, yeah, we know that most people don't want to be in charge, but most of them are women and not white. They don't know what's best. I feel like there was a time when fascist political parties would just say that they don't care about democracy because they believe in a natural hierarchy where white men are going to decide everything. When and did that change? I mean, there was sort of like a liberal revolution in the late 18th century that after that, to say that you did not believe in democracy was a problem. Whether or not that democracy should actually apply to most people was a different thing. But yeah, I think that this main thing is I think that'd be around that time, the liberal revolution of the late 18th century. How does an entire country's internet go down? It's because Canada's internet is owned by 3 megacorps, or maybe like 2 megacorps, and one of the megacorps had their entire network go down. So I'm actually saying like half of Canada's internet went down, but because it went down, there was a bunch of government organizations that had their contracts with them, and like a bunch of banks that run their debit and credit card stuff was with them, and so like a whole bunch of stuff for the economy went down, a whole bunch of stuff for like whole bunch of people's cell phones went down. It was a whole thing. Hello, Johnny Desu. All right. So what we got next. I was watching St. Andrew's new video about the Caribbean. It's largely focused on British actions there, but he also lists off the different colonizers, US, Spain, France, etc. He also has the Swiss and Russian Empire there. What the hell did those two do in the Caribbean? Ooh, I actually don't know. So Swiss, oh, okay. That's Swedish. So let's see, we got an article. Okay, so the idea is that Swiss roots Colombian offshoots, or Caribbean offshoots, a legacy of Swiss involvement in the colonial systems, an article on this. Switzerland's not normally thought in connection to colonization, but recent historical research has shown that Swiss companies and individuals participated in all sectors of the transatlantic slave trade and the plantation economy. Even a literary scholar can show repercussions of this involvement. I can call attention to 4 Caribbean authors with Swiss roots: Guyanese writer Edgar Mitzoller, and Cola de Brot, Tip Morug, and Pierre A. Lofer, all 3 from Curaçao. Okay. Now I want to know about the Russian Caribbean colonies, because I don't feel like Russia just had Alaska and sort of like the sort of Pacific. Just doing a little bit of Googling to see. If anyone knows about Russia having a role in colonizing the Caribbean, that'd be interesting to find out. Does seem that there was, at least Russians were involved with deciding some of the borders in the late 19th century anyways. All right. Interesting. All right, if you had to choose a good alien investigation show, what would it be? Or are all of them just bad? The best alien investigation show is mine. It's probably not aliens, the best UFO-related piece of media ever made. But also the X-Files, because it's fiction and it's very fun. It's a fun fiction show. And the X-Files is a very good show to revisit in our modern age, because the creator of the X-Files is now very well known for his other, like a lot of his storytelling and design and stuff like that has been showing up in his other big projects, which are Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So if you want to kind of see that style and like where it kind of its sort of evolution in its early days, you can check out the X-Files. And it's fiction, so it's not like, you know, trying to pull some bullshit by trying to make you believe in UFOs. HAL 9000 fan edits of the Star Wars prequels? Why? What are these fan edits? Because I don't have a strong desire to return to the Star Wars prequels. I don't really like Star Wars all that much. And, the prequels were pretty bad movies. But yeah. They take out a lot of the silliness and tighten the story. Interesting. All right. I'll have to check this out later. I could use some light entertainment. All right, what we got next? So you know how people always react with shock when they study German history and realize the Weimar Republic was pretty progressive, at least given what the Nazis were like? Do you think people in the future studying the U.S. history will view the increasingly mainstream acceptance of queer people in the U.S. from the mid-90s to 2016 in the same way? Like, do you think that students studying history in 2188 will be... Wait, they went from President Obama to trans bathroom executive to, in 2015, to President for Life Ron DeSantis banning cross-dressing in 2029. How did that happen? Yeah, I think that we have definitely seen, I mean, even in the last, year or 2 years, a huge backslide when it comes to the hard-won rights for LGBTQ people in the 2010s, and earlier. And that it seems like it's on par to get worse, not better. So yeah, friggin' lose me with that, long arc of history bullshit. Unfortunately, we are backsliding on a lot of our best stuff these days, or a lot of the hard-won civil rights of marginalized people. There's documented evidence of UFOs. There is definitely what's it called, the whole UAP phenomenon, but the explanation, there's way more than enough explanations, including drones and shit like that that are way more plausible than somehow an intelligent alien species was able to solve the problem of traveling faster than light, only to come here and star in a few grainy videos before disappearing. How does a country avoid backsliding? Basically, I mean, if I had a solid answer for that, I feel like I'd be shouting it everywhere. But the main thing is you have to be vigilant and realize that, this stuff, social victories are not one and done. They're not inevitable. And that really freedom and civil liberties and civil rights are things that you always have to be defending. You always have to be fighting, because there's no solving of racism. There's no solving of homophobia or transphobia. You have to basically always be stamping it out wherever it goes. It's basically the work of anti-fascism. Or in the sort of distilling it down to its component parts, permanent revolution. If you want, there actually is an Area 51 episode of It's Probably Not Aliens, I think, coming out tomorrow. I think tomorrow we're getting the Area 51 episode, so I think that's tomorrow's episode. So you'll get you can get a little bit more on that kind of stuff. All right, let's see. We got one last question in the question hole. In Europe and North America, the 1930s was an age of particularly predictive if you supported fascism or not. Like today, it's very obvious that you're way more likely to be progressive and anti-fascist if you're young. Was that the case during the first fascist surge? No, I think that there was like, you were more likely to support fascism if you were, like I think there was a bit of like, fascism was a little bit more popular with young people than it was old people. A lot of older people were more conservative or socialist. Because there was a lot of like socialism in the 1930s was very much firmly out of like the workers movement, right? So a lot of like working age people were socialists, and a lot of older people also were much more conservative and such. So a lot of you look at like a lot of the Nazi movement, it was a lot of young people in the countries that they happened in. It was that and like a bunch of like very disaffected World War I veterans who would also, skew pretty young by the 1930s. Depending upon your definition of young, I guess. A lot of them would have been like in their 30s, basically. UFO malarkey, oh boy. Yeah, I've always had a very strong interest in sort of UFO alien conspiracy theories, and so It's Probably Not Aliens has been a very cathartic project to research into all that stuff. Very exciting. Very good. Very fun. A lot of fascists felt like they missed out on the war. Although a lot of fascists were also veterans who were like, they felt like they weren't supported when they got home. There's this Zoomer generation trend who likes the conservative right-wing populist aesthetics. Look what's going on in El Salvador and Austria. Yeah, there's this whole thing where people were telling me that Zoomers are more conservative and right-wing than millennials are. I don't know what that means exactly. I don't know how accurate that actually is, but... Have you ever been teetering on the edge of believing in conspiracy theories that you study or that you don't believe now? Maybe a little bit when I was a teenager or when I was a kid. But I very quickly was like more interested in like the people who believed in those conspiracies before things went through. Like my dad, I think my dad like believed a lot of it, but wasn't like, wasn't super involved in believing in it as like it wasn't part of the subculture. And I guess that sort of rubbed off on me. But for the most part, I've never, like, sure there was a time where, like, I believed that, it's like alien spacecraft, sure. But I think that once I, like, grew to an age where that would start becoming embarrassing, I feel like I quickly got out of it. 75% of people under 30 have a positive opinion of socialist ideology. That's pretty awesome. What's my stance on proportional representation in labor? You have formed a coalition. I already answered that question earlier in the stream. I think it's fine. It's better than freaking what's it called? First past the post for sure. All right. I feel like that, first of all, that's all the questions. So I'm wondering if that might be time to start looking into other people to raid and to sort of move on with my day. Let's see. Let's go on Twitch and see what's up. Okay, we can... Oh, yeah. We can raid Lumiru. That's always good. They're good people. All right. I'm gonna take out now. Or I'm gonna take off now. But guys, this has been really fun. I'm glad that we were able to get some energy going later in the stream. I will take off. I'm going to work. And by work, I mean probably take care of the baby. So I will be back next week. Next week is August 1st. So we might have Mia back for that. That'd be nice. Alrighty. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And I will see you next time.